Um, so one of the things you spoke about there was dysfunction. Um, in your mind in 2021, are there specific things that you feel that men are really, really challenged by? There's sort of subjects that just continually sort of have been coming up over the last few years, or this year in particular, that you're noticing in people you work with or society at large, things that men are being challenged by?
Well, I mean, there's the traditional themes that always crop up in men's lives, which is, say, commitment versus loss of freedom. So one thing we talk about a lot, in this work, is there different forms of freedom, right? So the masculine essence is often associated with the ideas around freedom and the importance of a man being able to choose a sense of direction in life, which is true to a large extent, but there are different forms of freedom. So there's the freedom that comes from, say, not having any practical obligations in your life, being a so-called free spirit, right? But then there's a different kind of freedom that comes from commitment. So, for example, when a man is committed in his life, whether it's just to his business or to his partner, he attains a freedom of mind because his mind is not drifting off into fantasies and unfulfilled desires about what he doesn't have in his life right now. So it's a bit of a paradox. You might think a guy who doesn't have, let's say, relationships or a primary relationship is more free, technically speaking. It looks to be that way superficially, but he's not necessarily more free in a state of mind because his mind is going to be filled with thoughts of when is his next partner going to arrive, when is his real life going to arrive. So he's sort of like a bit of a slave to his imagination, right? His unfulfilled desires, cravings, right? As the Buddha said, that the one thing that stops us from enlightenment is tanha, which is a Pali word that means craving, or wanting something that is not here right now, right? So a person who doesn't have a lot of external obligations has lots of space in his mind to dream about what he doesn't have. So that's a type of illusory freedom, you could say. And then there's a different freedom that comes from commitment, as I was saying, because your mind is not so occupied, right? The partner's there, right? Or the business is there, things are up and running. And so there's not so much time spent in idle dreaming about what is not, right? And so part of the men's work is also a kind of a training ground in understanding the power of commitment, whether it's not necessarily commitment to a primary partner, because that shows up differently for each person organically. But there are always things that can be committed to in one's life. The next thing you have to do, the next problem you have to solve, the next element in your career that you have to tackle and face into. And so commitment is a huge part of masculine development, let's say.